Nobody knows for certain what are Madara's Mangekyou Sharingan abilities. Unfortunately, they were never shown to us in the manga or in the anime, so one could only speculate about what they look like. Now, there are people who say it's a Madara because Madara is an Indra reincarnation just like Sasuke, so they should have the same Mangekyou Sharingan abilities, but that doesn't really make sense because Madara and Sasuke have different Rinnegan abilities. Madara has Limbo, Sasuke has Amino Jikara, and it's just weird that Madara only uses his Susanoo when he opts to use Mangekyou Sharingan abilities. Are his Mangekyou Sharingan abilities that useless? Or he simply cannot use them while his Rinnegan is activated, because sure, Madara has the Rinnegan activated most of the time during the War Arc. He only uses his base Sharingan and the Mangekyou Sharingan for a few pages before he activates the Rinnegan in the big fight against the Alliance, so maybe there wasn't even time for him to use his base abilities. But we see, for instance, a clone that put the Raikage under a Genjutsu that was able to switch from the Rinnegan to the Mangekyou Sharingan very quickly when he had to use the Mangekyou Sharingan to cast a Genjutsu on the Raikage. So it's not as though Madara couldn't just revert back to his Mangekyou Sharingan to use his special abilities. It's just kind of frustrating Kishimoto never really includes them in the story because, yeah, people wanted to know, and we don't even see them in the flashbacks in the Madara vs. Hashirama fight in the Valley of the End, unless you count the OVA. So let's get the context out of the way. First of all, the Ultimate Ninja Storm games are pretty good. Most of them, at least. The last one was absolute garbage. And while you're playing them, there were a couple of scenes from time to time. Not video game cutscenes, but actual animated scenes where you watch the story. And they were very well done. They looked pretty cool. Some of them were considered canon, others not. Well, or at least nobody said they were canon. And in the game Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Generations, we saw for the first time what the Madara vs. Hashirama final fight in the Valley of the End looked like. Because this fight was teased a lot in the manga and even in the anime. This game came out in 2012 and we didn't see Madara vs. Hashirama in the flashback by that time. The manga was still releasing and it didn't get to the point where we saw Madara's flashback with Hashirama. And the anime much less because it's far behind the manga, having a billion filler episodes. So this was actually a pretty big deal. I remember back in the day watching the scene for the first time and being like, okay, so this is actually, you know, something important for the Naruto universe. There's the entire Valley of the End that was created because of the destruction of their fight and also the massive statues that were built there to pay tribute to those two legendary fighters clashing against each other. Even though it is a little bit weird for you to make a statue of Madara in there. I guess they wanted to honor one of the founders of Leaf Village, even though he was a clear enemy of the Leaf Village by the time he fought against Hashirama there. But still, it looks cool as hell, so I'm not complaining. Now, the only actual canon glimpse that we saw of Madara versus Hashirama fighting in the Valley of the End in the manga prior to that OVA was a single 2-page spread shown during the Itachi versus Sasuke fight when Itachi was explaining Madara's past to Sasuke about how he acquired the Mangekyou Sharingan and all that, and it's a great 2-page spread. But the thing is, it's just a small snippet of the fight, and in the OVA we can see much better what happened. That was pretty much the definitive version until we got the flashback in the manga itself. And there's a very particular thing that we see happening in that fight, which is Madara's Mangekyou ability. Now, we can't say with 100% certainty that that was his ability, because we don't see them talking when they're fighting or anything like that, not even their thoughts, but it does seem like Madara used his eye to produce that jutsu, because he had his Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan activated, and it was spinning while he was doing the ability. It's a good indication, okay, this is what Madara's main Mangekyou Sharingan ability is, at least for one of his eyes, and it's actually pretty damn insane. So Madara summons the Nine Tails in the OVA, and he clashes against Hashirama and his wood style. They also throw weapons and shurikens at each other, clashing in taijutsu as well, while the tail beast is fighting against the wood style, which is pretty cool. But there comes a point in the fight when Madara's Mangekyou Sharingan starts to spin, and he reverses time. Now, this is an incredibly overpowered ability that we don't really understand how it works, because Madara only uses it once in the OVA, and it's not exactly in a moment of grave danger where he needed to reverse time, otherwise he would die or anything. They were just trading blows, essentially, and he just reversed time. So obviously, by the nature of this OVA, they don't even exchange dialogue, they don't get their inner monologues, we don't even get a narration when their fight is happening. We don't really know the mechanics behind the time travel ability, but from what it looks like, we can make some assumptions and try to explain how it works. But before that, we have to first establish whether or not this ability has any validity at all, in terms of its canonicity, that is. Because yeah, this OVA is not considered canon by Kishimoto and by whoever else, but there are several filler episodes that actually wouldn't really interfere with the main story, therefore they could be considered possible to be a thing. There are others that obviously don't really fit the story, and you may be saying, but we saw how their fight looked like. It makes no sense for it to have two versions of the same fight in the same universe. So obviously the OVA fight is not really canon, it's impossible to happen, therefore it's not really worth to take a look at Madara's EMS ability. However, that's not exactly how things are. Because if you remember correctly, Hashirama himself was narrating his own fight against Madara during the flashback. He was telling Sasuke the story of the Leaf Village, of how it came together with the Senju and the Uchiha clans, and how Madara and Hashirama played a big role in it, and he decided to tell the story starting by the final fight they had in the Valley of the End, and then coming back to it in the end of the story. So things actually pick up in the middle of the fight when Madara and Hashirama are clashing against each other. The first panel we see of them, they're already exchanging blows, and the full moon backlights them in the panel. They're up in the air, and then when they fall, Hashirama falls on his wood-style thing with his weapons, and Madara falls on the Nine Tails. So the fight had already been going on for a while at least. Now this happens mostly because this is a flashback fight, even though it's very important. Things pick up when they are already heated, so there isn't that exchange of dialogue in the beginning of the fight. Hashirama decided to tell the fight starting by that point, but it's important for us to establish what they had already done in the fight when Hashirama starts to tell it. Madara had his big fan thing that looks like a guitar that he was using to fight against Hashirama. He had already summoned the Nine Tails, and Hashirama was already using his wood style. He was also using his weapons, which he summoned beforehand as well. And lo and behold, both a two-page spread that we were shown in the Itachi vs Sasuke fight, as well as the OVA, have those elements in them, but they don't have the elements that happened after that point in the fight, such as the Susanoo that Madara uses and eventually coats the Nine Tails with. And in the OVA, we actually see Madara summoning the Nine Tails, meaning that, yeah, this could have actually happened before the main event of the fight that we saw in the flashback. Even when Madara uses his time travel ability, that could have happened before. And he notices, oh, this is not gonna work, Hashirama, perhaps because he knows what I can do with it, he opted for the Majestic Attire Susanoo. We also see Madara shooting a Bijudama at Hashirama during the fight in the OVA, which Hashirama blocks with his wood style, and we know his wood style is capable of doing so by the manga fight. However, we also see he uses another method to redirect a Tail Beast Bomb in their manga fight, which is by grabbing it with his wood clone and shoving it back at Madara, which he doesn't do in the OVA. Perhaps he was trying to save Chakra or something like that, or they were not really going all out until that point in the fight when we pick up in the manga. You may say, well, but a Tail Beast Bomb is not going all out? Are you sure? And I would say, yeah, for this type of fight, a single Tail Beast Bomb is not that big of a deal. After all, Hashirama was casually grabbing it and shoving it back at Madara. Madara was casually blocking it. The Tail Beast Bomb was exploding on them, and they were both tanking it just fine with their abilities. Madara's casually swinging his Susanoo swords and shoving up mountaintops all around them, and then by the end of the fight, they are using so many OP powers, like a Susanoo sword enhanced Bijudama barrage against the 1,000-armed Buddha statue that's exploding everything. This fight is pretty insane and it's amazing, but a single Tail Beast Bomb is not that big of a deal. The thing is, in the OVA, we see that Tail Beast Bomb that he shot against Hashirama and that he blocked it was redirected upwards, which hits the top of this plateau, and that top that is exploded by the Bijudama eventually is the site that becomes the Valley of the End. We never see exactly what creates the Valley of the End in the fight between Madara and Hashirama in the manga, because let's be real, they're doing way more damage than just the Valley of the End crater. It would make sense for them to create that before the main exchange we see in the manga anyways, and then they actually end up in that spot in the end of the fight in the manga and also in the OVA, right where the eventual waterfall of the Valley of the End will be located, in the exact same spot where Naruto and Sasuke finished their final battle as well, which is very nice thematically speaking. So all those things could have just happened before Hashirama started to narrate his fight against Madara to Sasuke. There's just one problem with the fight, which is Hashirama uses the jutsu to contain the Nine Tails and break it free from Madara's control. It looks like just a bigger version of what Yamato does to the Four Tails when he goes ballistic against Orochimaru. He pulls chakra out of it with his palm, some pillars of wood rise next to the Nine Tails and all that. We know that this doesn't happen that way in the manga version. Hashirama actually grabs the Nine Tails with his Buddha statue, and then using the golem on top of the statue, he breaks Madara's genjutsu control of the Nine Tails. But we can also assume that after Hashirama broke the control of the Nine Tails during the OVA, he regained it in the middle of the fight, because obviously Madara re-engaged Hashirama. Yes, this is not the implication we get in the fight itself. It seems much more likely that they just fought until they finished the fight without Madara using the Nine Tails again. But we can just assume, oh, he could have used something to break Hashirama's suppression over the Nine Tails and then use a genjutsu again to control it one more time. And after Madara does that, we pick up right where the manga fight starts. They don't get severely hurt in in the fight in the OVA, and then there's this massive cut to the end of the fight, and that's where there are inconsistencies with the manga version. Because first of all, it's daytime when Madara is defeated, and it's nighttime in the manga, so that's an obvious difference. But a point in favor of the OVA is that the fight happened during the full moon, just like the fight in the manga as well, so that's something that fits. However, there are two other problems with how the fight ends in the OVA. Yes, Madara dies from the stab wound of a sword, and we don't see perfectly what happens because Madara is just a black outline when they see him quote-unquote dying. However, it does look like the sword was pierced from Madara's front, and we see this is very much not the case in the fight. Hashirama caught him from behind, stabbing him in the heart. That's the entire motif behind Madara's character. Oh, I can't stand people standing behind me, I always notice them, but then he doesn't notice Hashirama there. And the other problem is that Hashirama still has his Senju clan armor intact. In the manga fight, half of the armor was exploded during the fight. We don't see it happening because there's also another time jump during the fight in the manga as well, but we do see there was some battle damage and Hashirama's armor was broken. It seems to be fine in the OVA except for some scrapes. If you remove that final portion of the OVA and just keep the fight itself, then things actually fit pretty well, and you could assume that OVA has the beginning of the Madara versus Hashirama fight that picks up in the manga eventually, and then the actual ending is what happens in the manga. One thing is for certain, Kishimoto definitely gave the animation team at least a few bullet points on what's going to happen. Well, first of all, Madara used the Nine Tails. Yes, we already knew that from the manga itself, but we also see some interesting things that we kind of see in the manga as well later on, which is, for example, Madara dying to a sword stab. Now, perhaps when Kishimoto gave those notes to the animation team, he didn't even plan the flashback scene with Madara and Hashirama in the Valley of the End. Maybe his initial plan was just to leave that implied, but when Madara became such a popular character, he was like, okay, I might as well show this in a flashback. And then he decided to make things a little bit more epic for the manga fight. But there's one thing missing in the manga fight, which is Madara's Mangekyou Sharingan abilities. And if they included something like that in the OVA, I just have to assume this was one of Kishimoto's notes. And then maybe when it came time for him to put Madara in the manga and show the fight between Madara and Hashirama, Kishimoto was like, yeah, that ability I thought about, you know, for the OVA, and I show those guys what Madara was able to do. I think this could break my entire series if Madara's capable of doing that, and he's gonna be absolutely unkillable, especially as Neto Tensei with infinite chakra. So I am just going to omit that part of the story and never really show Madara's Mangekyou Sharingan abilities. As I mentioned before, we don't know exactly the mechanics behind the time reversal technique, but we can infer a few things from what we see in the OVA. Madara uses his Mangekyou Sharingan and time reverses around him. Now, does time reverse on the entire planet, or is it just a contained area around him? It's probably a contained area around him, like a kilometer or two, or maybe a few hundred meters, because we see several of those wood-style tentacles going back, and they're not very close to Madara, so it's definitely a decent area. The second interesting question is, does time actually go back, or are things in that area just forced to retrace their movements backwards? Because if that's the case, then the ability is not that powerful, assuming Madara also has to retrace his movements, which definitely seems to be the case by the way he moves when he's using the ability there, going back after the shuriken hits his fan. So it's just an oh crap button. If things are going badly for Madara and he's about to get hit by something, he can just reverse things back, and then you just kind of move backwards. And this would actually be a pretty light version of the Jutsu. Not a time travel version, but just, oh, you have to retrace your steps through space. My ability forces you to do so, but it forces me to do the same thing, so it's not as though I can attack you while you're being forced to move backwards. And because you're not moving back in time, it means that whoever's being affected by the Jutsu also knows you're being forced back in space, so it's not as though Madara will have the information of how you're going to attack next. So it's just a glorified substitution Jutsu where you don't actually substitute, but you undo your opponent's movements by forcing them to go back in space. However, the implication, or at least the impression that we get watching the OVA, is that Madara literally reverses time. It could be things just reversing their motion, but it appears that Hashirama is unaware of what's happening to him. Meaning that for him, after Madara uses the ability, it's as though he's attacking Madara there for the first time. Because for him, yeah, it would be exactly like that. Imagine you're Hashirama and you hit Madara with your sword and deal a massive wound on his face. But then, Madara uses his ability to reverse time around him in that particular area, and you're going back in time, unaware of what's happening. And then, when the ability stops, you're about to go and attack Madara again. And you don't know you've already done that, so you're gonna do the same thing because you had that thought to attack Madara in a specific way, and you just gonna do it. And then all of a sudden, Madara has the perfect counter for it, because from Madara's perception, he knows what you're about to do because he just saw it, unless he also goes back in time and doesn't keep the memories of what happened before he used the jutsu, which also doesn't seem to be the case watching the OVA. It seems like Madara retains the knowledge of how he's going to be attacked, and therefore he can pretty much counter it perfectly, but then it's impossible for him to lose any fights. Madara has an Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. He never goes blind. He can use his Mangekyou Sharingan a lot, and we see in the manga that Madara has a lot of chakra. Even when he's not in Edo Tensei, when he's alive, he has loads of it. Now maybe you could say, well, this ability takes too much chakra. It's like 50% of your chakra reserve, so it's insane. You can only use like once or maybe twice in a fight, and that's it, which would be a fair limitation to give the ability, but it would still be extremely powerful because you can just kind of let your opponent get you some way. You pretend you were caught for real, but then you reverse time, and then you can counter the attack that the opponent dealt on you in the perfect way to get him. And if this ability functions like other Mangekyou Sharingan abilities like Amaterasu or Kamui, consuming a similar amount of chakra, Madara would be able to spam it during fights, rendering him invincible. Obito is spamming Kamui 24/7, and he doesn't even have an Eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, so imagine what Madara could do with this ability. And if you thought Obito was invincible by phasing through stuff using Kamui, imagine what this ability would do to Madara, being able to reverse time around him so he's never hit by anything. And the most OP thing about this jutsu is that your opponent wouldn't even know that you're using it. You don't know Madara just reversed you back in time and knows what you're going to do exactly. You're doing the attack for the first time, so there isn't even no way to counter it. Like, Kakashi was able to figure out Kamui, Minato was able to figure out Kamui as well, but how are you gonna figure out that you were reversed back in time if you don't retain those memories? It's pretty much impossible to do so. You can only try and guess after many times of failing to attack Madara, but then again, how many opportunities are you gonna get to attack Madara if he's using this ability non-stop? Now you could say, well, I can't hit this guy, but you wouldn't really leap to the conclusion, okay, he's reversing me back in time. You'd probably say, okay, he's just really smart. He's able to predict every single movement I do. And he also has a Sharingan, which is famous for predicting movements, but reversing you back in time would be a massive leap in logic that you'd have to make in order to just figure out what Madara is doing. And then how to counter it is just another story entirely. How'd you go about countering it? You'd have to be fast enough to blitz Madara somehow and kill him in a single hit so fast and so brutally that he wouldn't be able to activate his time reversal ability. And we know that Madara has very powerful defenses, such as a perfect Susanoo. It's not as easy to deal a one-shot blow on him. And he also has a very good reaction time, being able to react to KCM2 Naruto very casually. So good luck! But what if I told you that Madara has been using this ability in the manga all along? Hear me out. One of the really amazing things about Madara was that he always had a counter for everything the main characters thought about, especially when he was in his Edo Tensei version. Just think about that. Naruto shoves a massive Rasengan on him after Inoki propels him upwards. He uses his Susanoo. Gaara uses his sand to take him out of his Susanoo, and then he uses the Rinnegan to absorb Naruto's Rasen Shuriken, which was coming directly at him. When Tsunade gets him with a massive punch and Gaara seals him, oh, what? He was a clone all along, and then he stabs Tsunade from within the wood? How did he know how to do that? It was annoying but amazing at the same time because Madara is such a cool character. We were like, how the hell is he doing that? He always predicts their movements. It's insane! But then some people theorized, wait, do you remember the OVA? He has a reverse time ability. Maybe he's doing that to the 5 Kage in their fight, but we just don't know he's doing it because we are watching the fight in the perspective of the Kage. So for them, they're doing their attacks for the first time, but Madara already knows it because he reversed those attacks before and they're just doing it again. Now he knows the perfect counter, so he takes appropriate measures, and that's why Madara was just absolutely toying with the 5 Kage. And back in the day, this theory made a lot of sense. It also holds water when we get to the other battlefield when Madara arrives next to Obito there, and then, as I said before, he casually blocks KCM2 Naruto, which is one of the fastest characters ever in the verse. I mean, Madara's also pretty fast, he has really good reaction time, but the way he does that is so casual, it's humiliating for Naruto. But that could be because Madara simply reversed time when he saw Naruto attacking him and he wasn't able to react in time, and in Naruto's second attempt, he just knew exactly what to do. And we just never saw that happening really because we are seeing it from the perspective of the victims. We didn't know how to deal damage on this guy. Well, it's because you don't know it, but he is reversing time on you. A few people thought eventually we're gonna get the revelation Madara is using the reverse time technique through some very clever means that they find out. Maybe people that are outside of the effective range can see their time being reversed and they can take appropriate countermeasures. Now, would that diminish Madara's cool factor? I would say yes, because it seems seems much cooler when he's just predicting those things and casually reacting to them just because he's simply built different. So if he needed to reverse time every time he gets hit by something, that would be a little bit, the character's not as cool, but he does have a very OP ability, I guess. But then Madara starts to get hit by things. A lot. After he leaves his Edo Tensei state. I mean, the tail beasts essentially play ping pong with Madara when he attacks them, and he just takes those attacks. Eventually Naruto and Killer Bee arrive in their tail beast forms, and all 9 tail beasts at the same time slap him, destroying his Susanoo and severing one of his arms. Then again, Madara was blind in that situation. He literally had no eyes. So yeah, it would make sense why Madara would be taking those hits and not reversing time, right? He can't use his Mangekyou Sharingan ability without a Mangekyou Sharingan. He can't use the Susanoo because the Susanoo is an exception. We saw Itachi using the Susanoo the first time we even saw the Jutsu back in the day in the Itachi vs Sasuke fight, and Itachi actually lost his eyesight and he was still using his Susanoo without the Mangekyou Sharingan activated, so that's fair game. But then White Zetsu brings one of the Madara's Renegans, which is therefore one of his Eternal Mangekyou Sharingans as well, because it's just an evolution of the eye, and Madara is still getting hit by things. Guy, for example, lands several blows on Madara with his Evening Elephant, then a straight punch, and then obviously the most iconic one, Night Guy. Now, you could argue that in that fight, Madara was more toying with Guy than anything else, and he was taking the hits on purpose because he was just having a fun time against Guy, so he wasn't taking it that seriously, and therefore he wasn't reversing time because he just wanted to see what Guy could do. And he did seem to be able to read the future, essentially, when he caught Sasuke from behind using his Limbo clone as Sasuke was trying to sneak up on him before he even became the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. Madara casually uses a Limbo clone to essentially freeze Sasuke midair, and Sasuke does nothing against him. He's powerless. You can also say the same thing about when Tobirama tried to catch him from behind using his Flying Raijin Slice, which was something that worked against Izuna, Madara's brother, back in the day. And also we see Tobirama blitzing Jubito with Naruto using his Rasengan, but that was Tobirama's Flying Raijin getting Jubito from behind, and he also manages to blitz Jubito when he grabs one of his truth-seeking orbs and sends him back. And Madara, with only one eye, not even the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, was able to casually avoid that attack from Tobirama, which seems to be his fastest one. So you could say, well, maybe when Madara got his Renegon back, he was able to use the ability and he was reversing people back in time. He could have reversed Sasuke back in time after Sasuke jumped on him from his bird and attacked him, and then he could have also reversed Tobirama back in time when he used his Flying Raijin. In his Ten-Tail state, Madara simply denies Minato's Sage Mode Rasengan, which he tried to aim at Madara using his Flying Raijin. Madara didn't even look at Minato and cut off his arm, tossing him back and also tossing the arm towards Kakashi, which was very humiliating. You could also argue, oh, maybe he just saw Minato coming and then he reversed time after getting hit by him so that he could counter Minato very effortlessly. And Minato's supposed to be the fastest guy, whatever, but it didn't look like that by the way he fought against Madara. The problem is that he starts to get hit after a while by things that are slower than somebody like Minato. Obito comes to him and manages to shove his hand inside of Madara's guts, draining a portion of the 8 tails and the 1 tail chakra. And I'm gonna bet that Obito, in that state where he had just used Rinne Tensei and also getting the 10 tails extracted from him, 2 things that individually are supposed to kill you, wasn't exactly at his peak physical condition to go really fast and surprise Madara. Obito just shoves his hands into Madara and he looks at Obito a little bit surprised, like, oh, okay, so you betrayed me. Yes, Madara, you can reverse time, so just reverse time and don't let Obito do that on you, right? After the Might Guy fights, Naruto hits him with a Magma Rasen Shuriken, which doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It destroys the Divine Tree and it cuts Madara's stomach, but like, he's pretty much fine afterwards. But I have to imagine Madara would have a better counter if he could reverse time there. He's also caught off guard by Sasuke's Minato Jikaro when Naruto and Sasuke use their Chidori and Rasengan at the same time and hit Madara with it and has to substitute with a Limbo clone. I have to imagine that if he was able to reverse time in that particular situation, he would have, and then he would raise some type of barrier around him to block the Chidori and Rasengan. That seems appropriate, but he didn't, and then Sasuke is able to cut Madara in half when Madara steals Kakashi's Mangekyou Sharingan. Now, a lot of people say, well, Sasuke blitzed Madara in that scene, he's so much faster, but Madara literally saw Sasuke coming as he acknowledges Sasuke is fast, but Madara saw him coming and chose not to do anything. He let himself get cut, and then he uses Kamui to get himself into the Kami dimension and get the second Rinnegan. He could have used the reverse time ability to take Sasuke back in time and then raise a barrier around him, but as I said, there wasn't really a need for that. Madara just had to get to the Kamui dimension, and he knew he could regenerate the lower half of his body in half a second, so it was fine. But then, there's also another explanation for why Madara was getting getting hit in his 10-tail state. It's because Madara didn't have his reverse time ability available to him. Because if you take a look closely at the OVA, he uses that ability with his left Mangekyou Sharingan eye. And White Zetsu gives him his right eye. Well, it's his right Rinnegan at the time, but also his right Mangekyou Sharingan. And we know that in most people, the Mangekyou Sharingan abilities are different in both eyes. So perhaps he just had another ability in that eye and didn't have access to the reverse time ability because, well, he just didn't have his other eye. So yeah, you can't really do it. But then you will say, oh, what about Tobirama's flying Raijin slice and Satsuki coming from behind? Madara simply noticed those things without the need for reversing time. Obviously, he can notice things as well. It's not as though any chump can come to Madara and punch him. Madara will do nothing about it and wait to reverse time so that he can counter you appropriately. If he can just counter without using his Mangekyou Sharingan ability, he will. So when he comes back from the Kami dimension, he has both Rinnegan. And what happens after that, he doesn't really get hit anymore by anything. He's able to casually cast the Infinite Tsukuyomi one chapter after he returns, so that's everything he needed really. Except that after he casts Infinite Tsukuyomi, the worst scene ever written in the history of mankind happens, and Madara gets stabbed from behind by Black Zetsu. From all the things I can think about where reversing time would be very useful, I'd say this is probably number one. Yeah, the thing that I thought was literally the incarnation of my consciousness and will just stabbed me from behind, so certainly there's something wrong with it. Let me reverse time real quick so that I can counter it appropriately, because I didn't see it coming with all my 4 limbo clones surrounding me. I also couldn't sense Zetsu coming at me, even though I could sense Hashirama half a continent away in my Edo Tensei form, which is far weaker and has way less sensorial capabilities because I have 6-path Sage Meal right now, so obviously I couldn't sense Black Zetsu coming towards me. But then again, even though he stabbed me, I can casually reverse time and counter him appropriately, right? Wrong! I cannot. I guess you could say that after Madara got stabbed by Black Zetsu, his karma, or whatever crap there is in Boruto now, activated, and it essentially stunned Madara's body completely. He couldn't use his chakra, he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything, he could just turn into a meatball and die to Kaguya. Because yeah, reversing time wasn't really the only thing he could do to essentially blow Black Zetsu away from him. He could have used Shinra Tensei, he could have used his Susanoo, he could have used a Limbo clone, he could have punched Black Zetsu because he's way weaker than Madara in that state. He could have used Truth-Seeking Orbs, he could have summoned extra limbs on his back with the Asura path, but no, he just kind of stays there because we need Boruto villains, bring Kage and the Otsutsuki, the best idea ever in the history of fiction, guys. So yeah, it's not as though he was out of options in that moment. Reversing time is just one more thing he could have done and he didn't. It's just the worst written scene in the history of fiction, as I said before, and everybody knows this scene isn't canon anyways. However, in the other situations, was Madara reversing time, seemingly knowing everything that's about to hit him and shrugging it off, or is he just that good, able to predict things and just has an immense arsenal of jutsus and a lot of variety to counter things appropriately? I'd say no, he wasn't reversing time at all. He doesn't have this ability in the manga, or at least not in the way I described here, where Madara reverses time for the targets that try to hit him, and he himself keeps the information about what they're about to do so that he can counter it perfectly, because this ability is insanely broken. You essentially erase the memory of your opponent, keeping what he's going to do stored in your memory, and then counter it perfectly, especially someone like Madara. As I said before, he has a lot of jutsus to do whatever he wants. If Madara had this ability, Hashirama would never beat him. Yes, you can argue that in the final moment of the Madara versus Hashirama fight, Madara was out of chakra. He didn't even have his base Sharingan activated, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't see Hashirama's wood clone there, and then he fell for Hashirama's trap and got stabbed from behind. However, throughout most of the fight, he had his Mangekyou Sharingan activated, and so he could use the ability to counter Hashirama's attacks. Oh, Hashirama destroyed the 9 tails and took it out of my control. Let me reverse time and then do that and then counter Hashirama's moves. Oh, did Hashirama just summon a 5-layer Rashomon to counter my Susanoo Sword Enhanced Tail Beast Bomb? Let me reverse time so that he doesn't do that, or so that I can do something differently this time, so that I can catch him with them. I could say, yes, this was a very long-range attack. Maybe the reverse time range wasn't that big, and that's why Hashirama was able to defeat Madara, because he uses so many long-range jutsus, which I guess is a fair argument. Then again, if Madara knew that his his range was 30, maybe 50 meters, and those very long range jutsus like the Bijudamas with the Susanoo swords wouldn't be able to get in the range whenever Hashirama would counter, then Madara would opt to attack Hashirama from up close and engage in a melee fight. And yeah, that's what he was doing in the beginning of the fight, but like, he wouldn't be fighting on top of the Nine Tails if he knew his range wasn't effective enough, and instead he would use the Nine Tails to corner Hashirama but attack him from up close. And then, if Hashirama's taijutsu overpowers him or anything like that, he can reverse time and predict what he's going to do with perfection. Madara and Hashirama were very evenly matched. Everybody talks about how close that fight in the Valley of the End was, and if Madara was able to predict things like that, then there's no way he loses. So no, Madara doesn't have this ability, at least not how it's depicted in the OVA, because if he had, literally no one in the history of Shonen would be able to beat him. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Please like the video as well. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and it also makes sure that YouTube knows you like my channel, so it's gonna recommend more videos to you. Watch this other cool video right here for more Naruto content, and thank you so much for watching, guys.